Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So I've been meaning to do a melee ranking for a long time, and I actually finally decided to do one for 7.3. I know 7.3 is going to be 7.35 is going to be released very soon, but I decided to do an overview of how melee we're doing in 7.3 and basically maybe provide a bit of a look in what 7.35 might look by providing a tier 21 kind of an analysis as well. So for each class I'm going to be now analyzing tier 21. For some classes I couldn't find concrete information, but there's only very few. But I'll be basically ranking melee classes and putting them into tier lists. So I'm going to be putting a low tier list, a mid tier list, and high tier list. So that basically means that someone who's in low tier list might not be doing great single target or sustained cleave AoE DPS, or might not be doing a lot of burst AoE. So there's kind of three parameters that I use to actually rank the melee classes. Like I mentioned, single target, 2 target or more target sustained cleave AoE, and also burst AoE. You have to keep in mind that a lot of melee classes can simulate burst AoE with Umbral Moonglaves, which is a really powerful trinket that basically gives you a lot of burst every minute and a half. But that has to be taken into account as well. So like I said, this is going to be my personal view on but I'm going to base this opinion on checking logs. I'm going to base this opinion on talking to people on Discord, talking in class specific Discords, and basically the what I see in raids as well. So this is at the end of the day my personal opinion. Please leave comments below if you feel otherwise, if you feel that your class is performing better. I do not want comments like these. For example, I'm getting comments like this. In my raid, I am like, as a Windwalker, in my raid I am topping DPS all the time. I'm not looking at one specific players. I'm looking at thousands and thousands of logs. I'm looking at a large group of players. You might be playing your class as efficiently as it's possible, but maybe your raid isn't. Maybe your raid isn't playing that well. That's why you're topping. So if you do leave comments below, please try and provide logs or things like that. So let's get started. Let's get started before it gets too long. The first class I'm going to look at is Feral Druids. Feral Druid tier 21 is looking to be either on par of tier 20 or even better. So it's looking quite good for Feral Druids at the moment. Feral Druids have been buffed, and their damage in 7.3 is actually way better than what it used to be. Feral Druids seem to do a decent single target. They do a good cleave, they do a good burst AoE as well. It all basically depends on talents and legendaries. Now, Feral Druids are not a very legendary dependent class. They can do quite good DPS even without the biz legendaries. It's not like Subtlety Rogue. With Subtlety Rogue, will have to have the legendary shoulders to actually perform really well. So that's a good thing about Feral Druids. Feral Druids, like I said, can actually do most of the things pretty well, and I'm going to place them probably in the mid tier and possibly maybe mid to high tier, somewhere along those lines. I feel that Feral Druids are quite fun to play. They can do everything quite well. They might not do a single thing the best, but they're all around a good melee class. Let's look at Enhancement Shamans. So Enhancement Shamans, based on the logs and things like that, they're doing okay. Enhancement Shamans, probably the best thing that they do right now is single target. On certain fights like a Wrath with single target is really important. Enhancement Shamans are doing pretty well. On AoE or sustained AoE fights, let's say for like Demonic Inquisition, where you have 2 target cleave if your tanks are doing it properly, or if they can do it properly, or like something like Desolate Host, so there's a lot of ads where there's a bit of burst AoE and sustained AoE. Enhancement Shamans seem to fall behind. Their tier 21 is not looking as good as tier 20. So at the moment, Enhancement Shamans are pretty good at single target, or somewhere along those lines. I would place them somewhere along the mid tier, maybe close to low tier almost. I'm going to place them in low mid tier. Or low mid tier, exactly. Now, let's look at Windwalkers. Windwalker Monks tier 21, again, is actually not looking as strong as tier 20 at the moment. Of course, all of these tier evaluations might and will change very soon, so you have to keep in mind when this video is released. Now, Windwalkers are actually right now in raid scenarios, in DPS scenarios, are looking as one of the worst melee class in the game. Even though Windwalkers can actually do pretty good sustained AoE, sustained cleave damage, there's just not enough players playing Windwalkers in Tomb of Sargeras. Mythic bosses, they are ranking really, really low. Windwalkers are going to be buffed in 7.35. It's going to be a well-deserved buff, but right now Windwalkers, I'm going to place Windwalkers in the low tier. They're just not looking strong at all in raid scenarios. Now let's look at Red Paladins. For a long time, Red Paladins were considered as one of the low tier melee DPS. Tier 21 is actually looking very, very strong for Retribution Paladins, which is good to hear. Red Paladins can be considered as an okay class. Red Paladins do okay DP, single target DPS, single target sustained and cleave. All I can say is mid-tier. Red Paladins is the definition of what mid-tier, or possibly even low-tier, but I think that Red Paladins deserve to be placed in mid-tier melee DPS ranking. Now let's actually look at Unholy Death Knights. So tier 21 is not looking very strong for Unholy Death Knights. It's looking a bit worse than tier 21, than tier 20, excuse me. But it only seems to work for single targets, so that's also a big minus for Unholy Death Knights, because it's not going to buff their AoE DPS. So it's kind of a negative impact on it. Now Unholy is actually looking quite strong on single target, and it's looking quite strong on even AoE and things like that. Looking from the logs, they seem to do like amazing Garrote damage. They're like #1 ranked on Garrote. I would actually think about placing Unholy Death Knights right now to either mid or even top high tier. So I'm actually gonna place them between the mid and top. I'm going to be a bit more detailed about this. I actually feel Unholy is doing pretty well in this tier. Now Frost DKs or Frost Death Knights are doing pretty bad in Tomb of Sargeras. They're doing actually pretty bad. I would actually place Frost DKs either low or mid, somewhere along those lines. They just seem to do everything worse. There's no point in playing a Frost DK. You're better off playing it Unholy and doing more damage in almost every case scenario. Now the interesting part is that Frost DK tier 21 is looking insanely strong right now. It's looking like one of the best tiers. And there is chatter in Discord, and there is chatter among Frost Death Knights that it's possible that this tier is going to make Frost DKs as the best spec to go in Antorus raid. Now this is very early days, and this is very early speculation. A lot of people are saying that tier 21 is going to be nerfed. So when you're watching this video, if tier 21 is not going to be nerfed, if tier 21 is going to stay the same for Frost DKs, there is a high chance that Frost DKs are going to do insane damage in Antorus, or at least maybe even take over the Unholy Death Knights, because Unholy Death Knight tier 21 hasn't changed a lot. It's just stayed the same since it's been first introduced. So let's see what happens. But Frost Death Knight tier 21 right now is looking really strong, and there is a slight possibility that it could become as one of the main specs for DPS Death Knights. But you need to make sure to check how tier 21 is looking for Frost. Now let's look at Arms Warriors, probably the most interesting class here. I would 100% would rank Arms as one of the strongest melee DPS in the game right now. Arms are just doing insanely well in Tomb of Sargeras. Now tier 21 is looking pretty strong. I need to see, well, tier 21 is looking pretty strong, but at the moment Arms are topping top single target damage, have amazing cleave AoE, and probably have the best burst AoE of any class in the game right now, which is strongly evident in Mythic Plus as well. So Arms are definitely deserving of being in the top tier DPS list. It's one of the best specs right now, and I can't looking at the logs, it's just basically dominated by Arms Warriors. Now let's look at Fury Warriors, which is basically the class that is you don't really want to be playing because Arms is so overpowered. But at the end of the day, there's so many Fury Warriors because they like the rotation, or maybe Arms Warriors are game style is a lot based on playing around your procs, while Fury game style is more balanced and more maybe straightforward, if you kind of get my understanding of it. Now Fury basically performs worse than Arms on nearly every single encounter, on nearly every single type of encounter, except for Harjatan. That's what Fury Warriors are doing really well. But besides that, Fury Warriors are not really doing that strong. I'm not completely sure about the tier 21 yet, but a lot of people are playing Fury Warriors purely because of the rotation. At the end of the day, if you're trying to optimize, it seems that Arms are just... Tomb of Sargeras 7.3 is an Arms patch. Now let's look at Havoc Demon Hunters. Now Havoc Demon Hunters are quite sad right now, because there is really no point in bringing a Havoc Demon Hunter over an Arms Warrior. There's really no point. Havoc Demon Hunter seems to be either mid or even low DPS. Probably the strongest point about the Havoc Demon Hunters, maybe single target on some of the Tomb of Sargeras fights, like on Garroth and things like that, which is purely a single target fight. Havoc Demon Hunter seems to do pretty okay there. But if we go to something like cleave AoE, like the Demonic Inquisition, or if we go to a burst AoE or sustained AoE fights like Desolate Host, Havoc Demon Hunters really fall behind. Overall, I would place Havoc Demon Hunters somewhere between low and mid tier, somewhere between there. And like I said, if you're looking to optimize your raid, there's really not much point of bringing a Havoc Demon Hunter over something like an Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior will just do things better if you're trying to optimize. Now let's look at the Rogues. So this is the second class that's going to be, or at least second or third class who's going to be placed into the top tier list. Subtlety Rogue tier 21 is looking as good as tier 20 at the moment, without the keep in mind the numbers might change. So tier 21 is looking pretty decent. Subtlety Rogues are insanely good single target DPS. They do good AoE, they do good sustained AoE as well. They're pretty much... Subtlety Rogues are pretty much an all-around amazing melee class. On top of doing a good damage, Subtlety Rogues are also renowned as one of the hardest classes to kill, basically. You have so much utility as a Subtlety Rogue, it is just insane. You know how before this expansion, hunters were being used for soaking everything, or to doing the hard abilities where the bosses where there's additional mechanics required. Subtlety Rogues kind of came into that spot because Subtlety Rogues have so much utility, so much death prevention, that especially in Tomb of Sargeras, where soaking is basically every second boss will have some kind of a soaking mechanic. Maybe I'll exaggerate, but because of this, because of the utility Subtlety Rogues provided, Rogues were, like, I mean, I think the couple of first kills in Mythic, Avatar, I think every single guilds were using 5 Rogues. I think the same kind of 5 Subtlety Rogues. I think the same kind of thing was happening with Mythic Kil'jaeden as well. So amazing, probably the best utility in melee class, at least. One of the best utilities in the game from Subtlety Rogues, and an amazing DPS on top of that, which makes Subtlety Rogues a clear contender for the top tier. Now, if I look at other rogue specs such as assassination or outlaw, there really isn't much point playing other specs at the moment as a rogue, purely for the fact that subtlety is doing so strong. If you're really trying to optimize your rogue gameplay, you should probably stick to Subtlety Rogues at the moment. So I'm not really going to look at assassination or outlaw that much. So this has been my overlook of melee rankings for Tomb of Sargeras for patch 7.3. Keep in mind that it also provides an overview of what tier 21 is looking. There's quite a few classes that are getting very strong tier 21s. There are quite a few classes that are getting buffed. Windwalkers are getting quite a big buff. So we have to see how Windwalkers are going to do in Antorus raid. But right now, this video probably did not provide a crazy shocking news. Subtlety Rogues, Arms Warriors are pretty OP for this whole patch. Let me know how you feel about this ranking. Keep in mind it's a personal list. Keep in mind that it was based on a lot of the logs and a lot of discussions on Discord and things like that. But let me know how you feel about this video. Let me know how you feel about the class that you're playing. Let me know how you feel about the changes or the tier 20 wounds for your specific melee class. And thank you for watching this guide, and I'll see you next time.